Hello, today I will show you the whole story about the corrections in employees' salary submit to bookkeeping, and let's look at some pictures that I prepared for this demo. This is actually the scary picture of how the submit history looks like. So we have a submits, and then every submit can have a history which moves up in the versions, and every project submit has an employee submit, and every employee submit has a salary periods. The salary periods criteria to get into this submit I actually showed you in the previous video. It depends on the dates of submits. So for the demo purposes, let's agree that we will have two employees, employee 1 and employee 2, and then we will have a submits. The first one will be for winter, and the second one will be for spring. So let's look at the first picture. This is how history looks like now. I cleaned up the database for the demo purposes also, and this is like the history looks initially. So uh, let's move on and let's see this picture. It means that for the for the season of winter, we're going to make a submission for the winter, and it will include exactly one period for one employee. So let's make it. Let's make things rolling. Go here. Select the first employee, month of January. Save. Uh, Select the winter here and then submit. Okay, we got we got the month of January for our employee 1, which was our intention. We send this to bookkeeping. This is not new. You already saw this. I just need to set up the stage for our further findings. Okay, we return to the employees. Now let's look into the picture number 3. Here you see the next submit will appear. The next submit will be for the spring, and it will contain the employee 1 March month of April, so as we agreed. So we go here and approve the April for the first. Save. Now we going to select whole spring. Okay, this is also expected. You see that we are going to have a submission submit where we will have our employee 1 month of April, which will perfectly represent this kind of picture. So no corrections appear. So the stage is set up for us, and let's move on. So now I prepared the list of the things that can actually fire correction generation. So first thing is changing value in existing period. Okay, so we are not going to send this now. We move here, say, and we are going to change something for the January. Let's change something significantly, then we approve, and then we save. Okay, so let's look at the picture called changing value in existing period. So what we see here, we are going to make a new submit for the spring, which will also include only April for employee 1. But the interesting thing is here. It's in red, and it means that we have a project submit version 2, meaning that there were changes for the winter. So the system detects that the January value for subsidy or for eligible, as we call it, it was changed for employee 1 for the January. So it's gonna be the correction over here. So there will be bookings for normal submit, and then for the red it will be the correction. Let's see how it works. So we're going to submit to the January. Okay, we see. Now we see that we have the normal booking for March of April, and for the January we see the history, we see the version 2. Actually these versions here, they correspond to these versions here. It's a number of submit version. Okay, so we see this month of January, and we see that the change was done. So it was 24, now it became 33. The difference in correction is going to be 9, which is also not new, and which is pretty simple use case here. Let's not send it, and let's change it to 1, and if we're going to make submit, you see that the correction is gone because the value was changed to the previous value. Now let's look at our next use case, adding employee in the past. Also, I created the diagram for this use case, adding employee in the past. It means that what we're going to do, we're going to add the employer submit for already submitted period. I mean, like for the winter, we didn't have any submission for employee number 2, and system will detect that okay, the new employer was added, and it will, if it's in red, it will generate the correction for already submitted period. So for the spring it will be the same, April, but for the winter we are going to generate the correction here. So we go to we return here. Oh no, we go here and add the month of, oh, we don't have a January for employee number 2. This is employee number 2. It has only February. Okay, let's do it with the February. Also will work as a winter. And now let's again submit for the spring. And what we see here, we see that we have a correction for the January, and we see that the history version 1 is empty, meaning that okay, this employee was not there at all. So its subtotal was 0 for the version 1, and for the version 2 we have a amount for month of February. Okay, it was supposed to be January, but whatever. And we got this amount as a correction amount here. Okay, so that was a use case that we call adding employee in the past. Now let's look at the situation when we have adding period in the past. Adding period in the past, I have a picture. I mean, like this is employee adding period in the past. It's a little bit different use case because we have employee 1 already present. What we're going to do, we're going to add the period for the previous submit. So say for the winter, we're going to add the February for employee number 1. So we go here. This one we're going to cancel. And now we're going to employee number 1. And okay. Now we're going to add the period in already submitted salary period in already submitted data. So it's for the winter, for the February. So we save. And now we are going to generate submit for the spring again. Okay, and we see the correction which will contain the history for our employee number 1, telling okay for the it was a version 1, we have the just the month of January. Then the version 2 contains the employee 1, it contains a January and the February now, and which also effectively give us a change in a subsidy amount, and it's going to be a correction. Okay, so that was our previous. Okay, let's clean up our test data. Now let's look for the next use case. It's a removing employee in the past, and I will show you the picture removing employer in the past. It means like we are going to make submission for the spring again, but for the previous submission we are going to delete all the employee 1 periods. I mean, like in our case we are going to delete the month of January for employee number 1. So we go to employee number 1, say okay, month of January is not good anymore, save, back. Now select June again for the spring. Okay, and now we see the correction with the minus. Let's look to the annex. And annex actually showing that the version 1 here, it contains the month of the January for employee number 1. But if you look at the version number 2, subtotal is 0, meaning that we remove the employer completely from the previous submit. It will give us actually the submit version number 2, because when we generate the corrections, I will show you later another picture, it always the current state of affairs against the last known version of a submit for that period of time. This is done because we need to somehow match the periods and they keep the history, and this is the structure how system works. Okay, so let's move to another use case. So this was a removing employee in the past. I show you the picture again when we completely remove employer submit for that period. So the next use case is removing period in the past. Removing period in the past. Removing period in the past. This is a little bit different. So what I will do, I will actually clean up the database to create the test case for us. It's pretty fast now. Okay, so let's look at the picture. So what we have, the first version of the first submit for the winter, it will include both month of the January and March of the February for our first employee. So let's set up the data. I cleaned up everything. So let's go here and yeah, this one is needed. So this one is not here. So I'm going to submit the winter, which will include January and February. So let's save and make a submit for the winter. It will, yeah, it includes our first employee January and February, and we need to send this to bookkeeping. Okay, I booked our thing. So now we have let's back to the picture. Now what we have only this box here. So we submitted for the winter, and this submission has an employee one submit, which includes two periods for the month of January and March of February. Now what we're going to do, we're going to submit for the spring. So we need to include the month of April for employee number one. On the other hand, what we are going to do, we're going to drop the data for the month of the February. So we are going to remove that month. So playing the role of the project owner again, I'm going here. So I'm going to cancel the March of the February. February, it was a February in the picture, yeah. So I'm going to remove the February and I'm going to add the April at the same time. Let's save and let's generate for the spring. Okay, so we see the amount for the spring for the month of April, and now let's look at the correction here, which tells, okay, version 1 actually contains two periods for the January and for the February. And then version 2, we see it contains only 1 month of the January, since we canceled the February, and since first we have the changes and we are going to have a correction because of that. So this is that's our removing period in the past. Okay, so the next one I will show you a picture, so you realize that the removing period in the past will generate the correction. Now the tricky use case when we are changing the formulas. So what we are going to do, let's get this month of January back, March of February back, generate again. Okay, no corrections because we actually returned the month, so our data is now pristine. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to change the formulas, and this one is the tricky one. Here I have the salary calculation, and we are working with a guy, employee number one is a contract. So let's go here and say like eligible is a total plus 20. Let's change it to total plus 35. Now we're going to back office. Oh, ah, oh my god. Okay. Need to log out. Admin. Okay, I actually misconfigured my system, so I will make another video for the salary. changes. But in general, I will show you, I mean, like the change of formula actually is pretty much the same. So I have a period of January, and I'm going to, for the winter, I'm going to create the submission for the spring again. When the period of the January will be recalculated, system will detect that the value is changed, and we will generate the change, the correction. So I will make it separate video for this, and thanks for watching. And oh, before closing this one, I will show you another picture showing how the system works in general with the corrections. So this is a timeline when the timeline of the project. Every stack here is a submit. So project have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 submits here. Actually, this green one, this is the newest one which we are going to generate right now. So it will be just bookings, the normal bookings. Now we look at the boxes here, and then system recalculates every period. So it takes all the salary periods for all employees and detects all the use cases I just overlooked, and it compares the current state with the last known state. If there are any change, then the correction will be generated. We see for the first submit, it's going to be a change. So we generate the correction here. For the second submit, there were no changes. When for the third, we have a change again. And the version is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the correction will actually create the version project submit version 5. Here we'll have a submit version 3. Here we'll have a submit version 2. And for the new submit, it's going to be the version 1. So for if you will have something like this in the submission, then you will see actually 4 bookings, 1 normal bookings and the 3 correction bookings. So now that's it. Thanks for watching.